Is Apple TV Plus really a worthy option? For me, the answer has been yes. Best Buy offers a 3-month free trial for completely free. If you're looking for a place to start with that 3-month free trial, let me talk to you about some of my favorite titles from Apple TV Plus. First, let's talk about series. Now, series is what we spend most of our time watching just because there's so many more of them than there are films or documentaries. And my favorite series on Apple TV Plus, or really on anything that I've watched in the past few years, has to be Severance. What I wrote down in my notes about this show is that it's thrilling, exciting, and completely unique. If you're into dramas and a TV show that really will just make you think, and you want to see a very cool world that's being built, Severance is the perfect way to go. Here's the description in case you're wondering what it's about. What Apple TV writes for it is Mark leads a team of office workers whose memories have been surgically divided between their work and personal lives. It's really a dystopian type of story where people have an elective surgery that when they go into work, they have no memory of it and they only remember when they're outside of work. But what ends up happening is that when they're in work, they actually form completely unique and separate personalities from the people that they are outside of work. I highly recommend it. You should check it out. The second series that I would recommend is Acapulco. Now, this is one of my favorite shows in the past few years as well, just because it's so funny and so easy to watch. If you want to just put it on and relax, it's the perfect way to do so. It's actually about a business mogul telling the story to his young nephew about how he made all his money. And it all started back in Mexico as a young adult when he lived in a town called Acapulco, and he works at a hotel called Las Colinas. That's where the whole show takes place. The thing I love about this show is that it's multilingual. They speak both English and Spanish about 50% of the time. So it is a subtitled show, but if you speak Spanish or if you're just interested in seeing a story like this, I highly recommend it. The third show, of course, is going to be Ted Lasso. This is the show that started me on Apple TV Plus. I checked it out on a whim with a free trial a few years ago, and I've been subscribed ever since. It's about an American football coach who gets hired to manage a Premier League football team, the other kind of football. So it's very funny, heartfelt, and again, I recommend it. There's lots of content about Ted Lasso, and again, being the poster child, I'm sure you'll probably be able to find out about it. Another one I wanted to mention that we just watched recently was Bad Sisters. I wanted to mention this one because my wife and I really enjoyed it, and it just goes to show how different and unique these titles are. This one is completely set in Ireland, in a more real-world scenario, and there's a set of 5 sisters that are tight-knit that end up hating one of the other sisters' husbands. It's very interesting, funny, and dramatic, so I'd definitely check it out. I did also want to touch on the limited series. This is one of my favorite things about Apple, since sometimes I don't want to have a multi-season series to watch. I feel like with a limited series, it just forces the creators to be more creative with their storytelling and tell it in a more concise way, which I love about these series. My favorite limited series on Apple TV Plus is The Last Days of Ptolemy Gray. This is a very unique and interesting story. It's hard to really explain what it's about. The description for Ptolemy Gray is that suddenly left without his trusted caretaker, Ptolemy Gray is assigned to the care of an orphaned teenager, Robin. When they learn about the treatment that will restore Ptolemy's dementia-addled memories, it begins a journey toward a shocking truths. Believe me when I say this is Samuel L. Jackson at his finest. It's one of my favorite roles I've seen him in. The second limited series I highly would recommend is called Blackbird. This one features Taron Egerton as a person who gets arrested and sent to prison, but then cuts a deal that if he goes to a maximum security prison and gets one of his fellow inmates to confess to his crimes, he would get fully released from his sentence and from prison. It's a very interesting story based on true events, and the performance from Paul Walter Hauser as the inmate that he's trying to get to confess is just insane. He's very good at what he does, and he comes across very creepy in this show because his character was creepy. I was very impressed by his performance in this one. The last limited series I wanted to touch on is called 5 Days at Memorial. Now this one, again, is based on true events. It's about what takes place in a hospital during Hurricane Katrina, when everything was flooded and the caregivers and their patients were stuck, stranded in this hospital. This one's a very heart-wrenching story, but again, very interesting and definitely worth a watch because I'd never heard about this before. To be honest with you, there's a lot more shows and limited series that I would love to talk about, but there's just too many of them to mention. I'll have a whole list of honorable mentions in the description if you want to check out what my other favorites are. And although there are some shows that aren't necessarily the best and definitely weren't my favorite, the quantity of good shows definitely outweighs the quantity of not so good shows on Apple TV Plus.